Let's go to Lisa's calling from Washington State on line 1. Lisa, welcome to the broadcast. You're on the air.
Now with this H.R. 1, what is our legal insurance against potential fraud that's already happened?
We have to look at the provisions of this bill and determine which provisions, in our view, are not constitutional. And then challenge those as either violating the elections clause, the electors clause, whatever it might be, freedom of association on those IRS and free speech under the IRS provisions they want to put in. But, Harry, it's a constitutional challenge that would have to take place.
I think that is correct. So I think it's important to go back to Than's point. We will provide first some analysis, and then we will challenge unconstitutional provisions. But we will also seek to inform our listeners, who ultimately are voters, so that they can get engaged as well. It's very, very important to note, for instance, that the attempt to weaponize the IRS is really a form of censorship, which ties directly into the cancel culture, which has overwhelmed much of Washington, New York City, and California. And so essentially, it's doubtful that any IRS controlled by the Biden administration will treat other organizations, conservative organizations, Christian organizations, fairly. So at the end of the day, that will also provide, at least potentially if the law is passed, another constitutional ground, because essentially what is being infringed by this particular provision is the First Amendment, the freedom of organizations to speak. In addition to which, of course, this rule will likely be discriminatorily enforced.
My question is, wouldn't it not require a constitutional amendment to change the election laws for the national elections?
You know, Harry, I've thought about it. I mean, you cannot do this by statute. It's unconstitutional. That's why. And you can't undo the election, is a great question by Mark. You can't undo the elections clause and the electors clause by a piece of legislation. The Constitution is supreme.
I think generally that is correct, but what the Democrats have done is they've attempted to take a page out of past history in which, for instance, there have been certain changes, but many of those changes, or at least some of the significant ones, as the caller indicates, were done through constitutional amendments. I'm not convinced that the Democrats, particularly the ones that have crafted this bill, really care about the written Constitution. They are not textualists. They believe in a living Constitution. They believe in the inevitability of progress. And so I think at the end of the day, they are quite willing to change the rules and then hope that they can find a sympathetic judge or justices who will okay whatever they've done in the past. And this then ties in with the other Democratic initiative, which is to pack the United States Supreme Court.
Well, and they found a loophole, Jay, on that section, Article 1, Section 4, and I heard a Democratic congressman talk about this because it says the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but the Congress may at any time, by law, make or alter such regulations, and that's what they're pinning this justification on.
We've got another question coming in, and this is the one that's on everybody's mind, and that's Donna from North Carolina. Donna, go ahead.
Hi. Thank you for taking my
Sure.
call. So as I'm listening to you, are you talking about what you're going to do against the parts of the bill, or are you already assuming that the bill is going to pass and getting prepared for that?
Great question. So there's two aspects of this. Stand quickly. There's the attack the legislation before it's a bill. That's going on right now. Than, explain that, and then Andy will talk about the litigation if necessary.
Yeah, we're going to do both at the same time. Attacking the bill as it's being considered. Jay, as the attorneys look at the litigation, we will actually take those arguments to the lawmakers themselves, to the senators, and say, you don't have the authority to do this. And then, by the way, if there are some provisions where maybe they have some authority to alter some regulations like Wes is talking about, we'll say, this is why it's a bad idea, even if you have the authority to do it. And by the way, we've got the experience to show you how it will end up. See the Tea Party scandal that happened. So to answer the caller's question, no, we're not assuming it's going to be passed. In fact, the primary goal here is to make sure that it's never passed. But at the same time, the conversation I know you're about to have, Jay, we'll be ready if it is.
Well, that's what you got to look at, because I don't think it can pass, but, stranger things have happened. So we have to be ready.